Thank you. My name is Darryl Friesen. Interesting little tidbit. Despite my boyish good looks, I was actually at and helped organize the original Access conference that we held here 19 years ago. Somebody dropped the ball in that. I've been super impressed by all the presentations, so in an effort to beef mine up, after a few drinks last night, I rewrote my notes. So forgive me if I have to consult my paper and if it's incoherent. So I'm here to talk about something that we developed at the University of Saskatchewan called Kenny. And if you looked at the program, it says that Kenny is a web-based login management tool to control user and IP address filtering for EZproxy. You read that, and your first question was probably, Kenny? As with all software projects, design decisions, important part of any software project. What server platform are you going to develop this on? What application framework are you going to use? What sort of license model will you have this under? The most important decision of all, of course, though, with your software application, is the name. And what do you name a system that's used to manage logins? You call it Kenny Logins. Now, sadly, there's supposed to be a little bit of audio there, but that's all right. If I can take just a small tangent, we experimented a little bit with storing our EZproxy logs in the Elastic Stack, and the guys from SILS yesterday sort of inspired me to maybe have another look at what we're doing there. So I think it'd be awesome if we could take the server logs from all of our systems and put them in one place with a sweet dashboard. And I've already picked the name. We're going to call it Snoop Log with the 2 G's, yo. So why do we have Kenny? There are a number of problems that we try to address. So whether or not we think the publishers should lock their content in behind a big fat firewall, a paywall, we pay them exorbitant amounts of money to get access to that content. So it's sort of on us to protect that and to make sure that our users can get to that content, and those who are not our patrons maybe cannot. And really that's probably the reason why most of us are running EZproxy anyway, is to manage that. Working in IT, library IT, I can assure you that the EZproxy and a lot of our other servers are under constant attack. And it's not surreptitious individual users, it's big organizations. They are finding ways to obtain login credentials from our patrons, and they are using them to harvest data from those resources that we license access to. Another interesting problem that we have is, at least at our institution, we group our databases in EZproxy according to the license. So bulk of our licenses are available to faculty, staff, and students. We do have the occasional one that's open to alumni, very few of those. We have some that do permit walk-in access, so if you happen to be in the branch, you can get access to the materials. But on occasion, there is a need to sort of override a patron's access to something. So if they transition from a current student to an alumni, it's possible that it can take a while for the HR systems to catch up. So I may want to, demote John's access from student to the alumni role. So when he logs in through the EZproxy, he's only able to get the resources that he should. Some of you may say, but EZproxy. EZproxy does provide some ways to reject IPs, to block IP addresses, to override that access, the groups that people are assigned to. For example, The main EZproxy config, there is a reject IP directive that you can stick in there with an IP address or a range. That will block connections. There is a user.txt file where you can list your users. You can use that to block addresses or, as I said, override what groups they're assigned to in your EZproxy config. But there are numerous downsides, disadvantages to that. In order to make changes to either one of those two files, you have to give those in charge access to the EZproxy server. They need SSH access, they need to be able to log in, and they need permission to actually write those files. And in the case of the config.txt, any changes you make in there require the EZproxy daemon to be restarted. So not only do you need to give your staff access to the server, but you need to give them elevated privileges, possibly root privileges, which as a sysadmin, man, I have a hard time giving John Yob access to the servers, let alone an untrusted user. And he's one of the other sysadmins. Some of the other disadvantages are that we find is that there is no record. There is no record of who blocked what user on what day and why. Sorry about that. This is the part that I rewrote. Yeah. So what we've got is, the other disadvantage that I just remembered. So it is the sysadmins that are typically involved in blocking users. We'll get a request from a vendor perhaps, or we'll notice some suspicious activity in the log, and we'll maybe want to block a user account. But it's not the system administrators that are in charge of contacting a patron whose account might be compromised and having them change their password and then reinstating their access. As nerds, I don't like to talk to patrons. I like to sit at my desk, on the keyboard. So that those tasks have been shifted off to our desktop support people. So without giving them access to the server, if they're working with the patrons to reinstate their access, that means they've got to kick this support ticket back to me to unblock that user. So it introduces an extra delay for the patrons and does them a bit of a disservice. So Kenny was our solution that we came up with. I'm not sure I can actually take credit for that name. We had another programmer, Stephen Brecker, who left us for Artifactual. He and I worked on the EZproxy stuff. One of us, we have a similar sad sense of humor. One of us came up with that name, Kenny Login, so I won't take 100% of the credit for that. But so it is a web-based application that allows any authorized staff member to manage user accounts and IP addresses. Users can be blocked, their access can be overridden, and the same with IP addresses, if you want to block IP addresses. Because it's a web-based application that doesn't run on the EZproxy server, it doesn't require that your staff have physical access to the server. So they don't need SSH, they don't need elevated privileges. So that keeps your servers slightly more secure, keeps the number of accounts down, which as a system administrator I find good. It ties in EZproxy using a standard authentication method supported by the EZproxy. And so that means no reboots of the EZproxy service either. And one of the better things that I think that it was specifically designed to do was to keep that complete history of who we blocked, when, why, and who did it. And if configured properly, Kenny also has the ability to actually terminate sessions in the EZproxy server, which if you're in charge of EZproxy, you'll know that blocking a user is only half of the problem. If there is an open connection, even placing that user in that user.txt or blocking them, as long as that session is open, the IP address that's making those connections can still use your EZproxy server until that session dies. And we've found some very creative ways where attackers have been able to hold open the session for days. at a time. So blocking is like super important. So how does it actually work? EZproxy supports two methods of custom authentication. One of them is CGI authentication. So with CGI authentication, EZproxy assumes that you're going to do all of the authentication yourself. You'll collect the user credentials, you'll validate the password, and then what you kick back to EZproxy is sort of a yes or no. With external authentication, it happens after your normal authentication occurs. And what it passes to that external service is just the username and the IP address from which they're connecting. And that's the way Kenny works. So it can sit and act as a filter. So if you're using CAS authentication or LDAP or Shibboleth, Kenny comes second in that process. And just returns either a no, this user is blocked, yes, this user is okay, or yes, this user is okay, but put them in these specific EZproxy groups. And I will risk a demo also. It seems to be working reasonably well for most people today. So I'll give it a shot. In case not, I actually did include some slides in the deck. Oops. This will work. Of course, authenticated access, you don't want the users to unblock themselves. So the main landing page for Kenny shows the current overrides is what it's called. We primarily use it for blocking access, but as I mentioned, it can be used to override what groups a person is in. So 99% of the time, we use it just to shut somebody out. So the default list when you log in is a list of all of the current people you are blocking. We are currently blocking 139 users. As I mentioned, just by placing options in that user.txt for EZproxy, there is no history. So probably most of these 139 were imported from that EZproxy method of blocking users. And I have no idea who did them or why. I'm guessing some of these blocks are as old as 5 or 6 years. Those students don't even go to our institution anymore, so we probably don't need to block them, but we have no history. So to err on the side of caution, I imported all those users into Kenny. So if they do happen to try and log in, they will be blocked. So what you're seeing is a list of what is their current state. So in this case, like I said, we block most of the users. There's an ability to enter a comment as to why, and of course a date with the ability to add and edit these entries in the database. Thank goodness for top nav. Which I will, I guess, have to go and rethink. It's just adding users as easy as clicking that entry in the top nav. As I said, we can block individual users or IP ranges. In this case, I will just block I'll block John. User ranges. There's a convenient little link in here out to the CIDR calculator. CIDR format is preferred just because on the back end it's easier for the nerds to program. Can I compare this against the blocked range? So in our case, our groups, there's a little drop down. Hopefully this is big enough. Is this big enough to be seen? Okay. We have some predefined groups of where people fit. So if I want to, I could make John just be a basic patron or an alumni. But I'm going to go ahead and block him. We have several ticket managing systems at the university, sadly. So I've built in some support for those. So if we happen to get a report from a vendor, those go into our tracking system. So this gives us a way to keep track of what ticket this is associated with. So this might be some number. Throw in a comment like, John is very bad. So you can see I blocked John. John is now blocked from using our EZproxy. If he attempts to log in, you get a message that specifically says, your account is blocked. There is not a link for them to contact us because we do not trust that a blocked user is who they say they are. So when we block a user, we'll kick this over to our desktop support people. They will find contact information for the user, and typically it's a phone where we want to talk to them on the phone and have them change their password before we can reinstate their account. So again, the history, we're showing just 50 entries, but there are, several hundred in here. The ones without a value, those users have been unblocked. They appear in the history, they don't show up in the current blocks. So if I have a look at, for example, my own, so this shows all the times that my account has been blocked and unblocked. And what's recorded in the operator column is whoever logged into the Kenny system. So it pulls that from the login, so we know who did it. So I blocked myself, which is, of course, what everyone would do. The EZproxy session stuff, as I mentioned, is this going to work? Awesome. So these are the active EZproxy sessions that we have right now. There's some GeoIP lookup in there. It shows the session ID and the username associated with it. So if a vendor does contact us, it's easy for us to block the user, come in here, have a look. Who looks unimportant? Fine, I won't do it. But if you use the terminate button, it will destroy the session in EZproxy. And it works by setting up a privileged account in EZproxy. You can create a user that doesn't have full administrative rights, but it has enough privileges to see status and to terminate sessions. And so it actually works by, it does HTTP requests, and it uses the EZproxy web interface. So it logs in, creates a session, does a screen scrape to find the sessions, and get the session ID, and then destroy it on the other end when you click the button. A little search on the side, JM. Oh, boop. Done. There is no message. I mean, that's a feature enhancement that said, yes, I actually destroyed this person. But theoretically, she is... theoretically, she's not in that list anymore. No, it's just a convenient icon, Joel is telling me my time is up, which is good, because I am... How do I get back to my slides, Joel? I have one more thing. I don't know if you noticed at the bottom of the screen, at the bottom of every screen in Kenny are some lyrics from Kenny login songs. I am sad to admit that that is the first feature that I programmed into Kenny logins. Not the ability to block users, not the link out to or to the sessions, but the display of random lyrics at the bottom of the page. Without these fun little things, I don't know, I think we drive ourselves crazy as programmers and sysadmins. Quick, I know Joel said I'm out of time, but I think I got a little padding here. For the nerds, this is a PHP application. U of S is starting to use, U of S library is starting to use an application framework called Laravel, and that's what this is written in. It uses Bootstrap, and if you know much about Bootstrap, there is these things called boot swatch themes, which are quick drop-in. They allow you to change sort of the colors of the buttons and the text super quickly. As I mentioned, the session management is just HTTP requests to your EZproxy server. And it says coming soon to GitHub. I don't know if this is useful at all. It's useful in our environment. I thought I would dump it on you guys. If you felt it was useful, you could download it. It's coming soon. I hope to have it done. What I needed to do was strip out some of the U of S-y stuff, to pull the U of S theme out. I'm not sure right now, like the ticket tracking stuff is geared specifically to us, our Jira instance and our Tracks instance. So I will probably pull that, that piece out and then release the rest of the code for you to pick at and criticize. Hopefully next week, within the next, say, 2 weeks.
So is there any reason this wouldn't work with a hosted EZproxy server? I mean, it seems like it ought to.
I don't know. I'm not entirely sure how the hosted EZproxy stuff works. It is meant to sit external to the EZproxy server, so it's running on our campus web server, our library web server. As long as you have, I guess, the ability to edit the config.txt, which I think is, or is it in the user? One of those two files is where you define what type of authentication you're using. So in our instance, there's a : CAS, and then the piece that that controls how the CAS server works. To get the external authentication to work, you just modify that one line and point it to another little config that says to reference Kenny to do sort of the filtering of users. So as long as you have access to that kind of stuff, that config, I don't see why not. Firewall stuff, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. It's very interesting.
But all right, if that's it, I'm going to cut foot loose. And that was for Craig. He made me promise I would incorporate one joke.